Should I say anything? Wait, we're already recording. Song name. Yeah. Okay. I was like, wait, you just clapped. Yeah. Actually, you know what? No words. Let's just vibe for a second. That was a song called Go Slow, written by yours truly. Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fantastic, and I appreciate you all. And what a lovely space this is. The fucking Roadhouse. You guys are G's. This is sick. I'm so grateful to be here. Yeah, let me just play some more songs. I'll just do some originals. Here we go. Sharing is important. I feel seen. The Roadhouse is for feeling seen. This was probably maybe the first song that I wrote where I was like, I could finding your voice in life in general is like a long and windy path. Everybody knows that. And whether that's literally singing, whether that's what you have to say and how you feel or expressing it. And I had a pretty profound experience going to this unplugged adult summer camp. I think maybe I've mentioned this to you all. It's called Camp Grounded. And basically no cell phones, no Wi-Fi, no electronics, just no work talk, just like playing in the woods as adults. And no drugs or alcohol too. So it's also like there's no inhibitors of like your awareness of things. You're just like very present, right? And all these people were like that weren't pro musicians, all had voices. Even if they weren't great, they still like weren't afraid to use them. And then so that sent me on a journey of like trying to figure out what I sound like instead of just be like Daniel the silent bass player or whatever, or Daniel the guitar player, right? You kind of can find your path. And so through that, I wrote this song called Swimming Upstream. Typical heartbreak song, but it's some real shit. There was a time not long ago where I could feel your every touch. You made me feel like I was your everything. I gave you everything I had. You make me feel like I am swimming upstream, except the current is too strong, and I'm not sure you'll be there. No, I'm not sure I'll see you at all. I know I shouldn't feel this forever. I know I should just let it go. People always telling me that just take it slow. Guess I fucked up and gave it all. You make me feel like I am swimming upstream, except the current is too strong, and I'm not sure you'll be there. No, I'm not sure I'll see you at all. The days they're drifting by, and I'm still seeing your face every day. The days they're drifting by, and I'm not sure I'll find my home again. You make me feel like I am swimming upstream, except the current is too strong, and I'm not sure you'll be there. No, I'm not sure I'll see you at all. Cool. I'm glad you like that one. I feel like my voice does not have very much left to give at this point. I am curious about maybe doing another cool instrumental jazzy song. What do you guys feel about that? Express myself. Okay, so one of the things that I think is really cool is to be able to like really have cool understandings and cool ideas and lots of different genres of music. Like we've talked about like doing a lot of electronic music or like whatever, doing rock music, and like kind of just like not limiting yourself to what you think you're good at and trying new things. And so like part of my growth as a musician was really just like taking myself out of like, what do I even like? What do I want to sound like, and who are the things that influence me, and what can I do to take those and make it into Daniel? Not just play what they do, but like my own interpretations or breakdowns of like how I orient or conceptualize around things that are hard, you know, or whatever. I simplify things. Just we all do. Like when we see something complicated, we think about things in simple terms. And so this song was one of these things where I was like, what if I learned all these songs and combined them and made them into my own? And it's pretty cool. So this is called the Amplified. Yeah. All the things.
Nice.
Tight. Fuck yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, let's chat.
Let's chat.
Wonky here.
Okay, no, it's good.
Dude, you're wearing your cozy pants.
That's right. It's different pair of cozy pants.
Different
this
pair of
time.
cozy
I've got a
pants.
collection.
I'm not
I'm
surprised.
endeavoring to never have to wear jeans again.
It's fucking awesome, man. It's perfect. Are you
good.
pants? Are you shorts?
don't know.
Doesn't
What do you
matter.
Yeah, it's
Fuck
fitting.
no. It's cozy.
Mm-hmm.
It's cozy first.
I ended up first getting a pair of these. Well, this pair actually at this music festival.
Of course. Yeah, that's
Ripped my
what.
shorts.
Oh shit! And you
Yeah,
needed shorts.
Big fucking hole in the shorts, and so there's this row of shops. This hippie dude kind of like selling these things anyway. They were like, he gave them to me for a discount because they were a little off colored, and then I ended up looking it up later. It's this cool company where he went to like Thailand and just put together a deal with like these local families there in like the countryside where they kind of like hand make all of these fabrics and stuff like that. So they're based
Cool.
out of San Diego. It's all renewable.
Well
this and
sourced.
that.
That's the shit.
Yeah, and it's like traditional, Thailand, I guess. There's a couple other pairs that have like more like ornate kind of designs and stuff. But
That's
it's fun.
amazing. That's a cool company.
Yeah, I really like it. And it's cool because like the guy was just there and he was a really chill dude and everything like that.
That's amazing.
I like supporting stuff like that.
Yeah, fucking local,
Mhm.
like people but and things that are just like really well sourced.
Things that are good.
Yeah, things that are not made
Yeah.
to just be like replaced as soon as they're
That's
off
right.
the shelf.
That's a
Yeah.
huge thing. Like
That is a huge
Planned
thing.
obsolescence or whatever.
That's the word
Right.
for it. Yeah.
well, and
Fuck that shit.
the system that we live under right now, it more or less needs that to be built into it, because if you don't have like the planned continuance of like consumers purchasing stuff, the economy just stops moving forward.
Yep.
So you need to have
Must
that
produce.
for it to continue to
And-
exist.
and-
Must mine
to-
resources.
and to some degree,
Must keep the
there
manufacturing going.
are elements of like our day-to-day lives that just like take on wear and tear. Your car needs new tires. Your car, just like the day-to-day wear and tear of life, causes the
Were
need
you guys
for that
talking about
stuff
engineered obsolescence when I walked up? I thought.
Yeah, that was part of the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and just how, aside from the car thing and the normal wear and
Yeah.
tear, but you're right, it's like built in that these things are going to go bad, like new phones every year or two,
Right.
right? Where
Batteries.
there's actually no need for that. I mean, you and I were talking about that on the way home from the last the last party,
The last
at the
amazing
hacienda.
freaking night.
We have to get into
Yeah,
that.
how really in the society that we live in, we might need to consume maybe 10% of the goods that we actually use and consume.
Right.
Maybe,
Oh, wow.
if that.
Yeah.
But it's just we've got this mindset so brainwashed and just repeated into us that you need this, you need that, two different types of coffee makers, whatever, and that's a hard thing to break away from.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it breaks the machine, like you were saying, right? If we stop consuming, and then the machine stops moving, and that's why a refrigerator does not last 30, 40 years anymore. I mean, I guess, I'm sorry, that's where the conversation started, I'm sure.
It's pretty
before
much
I walked
there,
up.
yeah,
But
but
yeah,
yeah,
sorry. It is, if we don't solve money, then it's not going to change.
Yeah.
We have to solve how we prioritize things. We have to solve what we define as value. And as long as that is a currency, then it is a consumable world we live in.
And it's like, how do you educate people that don't think on these types of terms? Like when they're like both their like purchase power and they're like, even like when you think about like the goods that you said 10% of the goods. What repeat your fact one more time?
So not even a fact, but I just like if you look at it, I would say that at most we only would need about 10% of the goods that we consume in order to live on a relatively high standard of living.
Yeah,
Right.
That all that stuff ties in. It's like what you use and like what you buy and then what you waste. And
Yes.
like think about like how much, even just like our party last night, right? Like what is the toll on the planet from that experience? There's definitely some, and it's like we have a society that doesn't even think on those terms.
Yeah.
No.
One of the tragedies of modern life that way is because everything is so interconnected and complex that it's really impossible to trace the effect of our actions and our consuming. Like,
Absolutely.
by owning a credit card, you could be, screwing over somebody in another country that you don't even know about, because these things like, there's this vertically oriented supply chain, and your products are coming from so many different places and so many different subcontractors and everything like that. Like how it's overwhelming to try and piece apart all those elements and say, oh, I know for sure that this item that I got is fair trade, isn't harming other people, right?
How could you? Like with the amount of time that it would take for you to go back and trace all those steps,
Right.
to prove, and then we have to put our trust in someone, and who is it that we get to put our
Who's
trust
the arbiter?
in?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that currently does exist for stuff like organic food, for instance. There's
Yeah.
independent certification boards there, and to some extent that can be manipulated. Like one of the things that's been a hot button issue lately is like palm oil, right? You guys know about this?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
orangutan deforestation kills the
Yeah,
orangutans
right.
in Indonesia, and there are certain certification boards that will be like, this is palm oil safe, but even orangutan safe palm oil, but even that's been shown to be able to be kind of manipulated. Like what does? Yeah, you're right. Who determines?
Who's the arbiter?
Yeah, what that is.
There's this is in certified Black Angus, the cow has to have 90% black hide, right? So it doesn't even mean that it is actually a full black Angus cow. It just means that 90% of its body is covered in black, which means it has Angus in it, is all that really, is attributed to. Like, that's one of the things I learned in the cattle market at one point.
Do you run into people messing with that too? Like,
Probably,
or
right?
something like that?
Probably.
People are like, it's 55%.
Right,
No,
you know?
it's
Yeah.
not.
Again, how do we who is it? Okay, here's the thing.
That's a good question.
If you slow the machine down, right? If you slow the machine down, then you lower the profits. If you lower the profits, then you lower the ability to employ people. If you can't employ people, then everyone, right? What's the burden on the system at that point? It again, like, how do you? I don't see how you fix it unless you change the value system.
Well, so we're rolling, by the way.
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh, yeah, we are.
pre-roll
Free
here.
ball. No, we're free balling.
I think we just keep this in, man.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is tight.
good
This is
starter.
important things to be thinking about.
So slowing down the system, though, again, there's this assumption that's kind of implicit to the way that this works, is that things need to continue to grow, right?
Right.
You need to continue to grow. You need to have employment because we want to avoid things like, I guess, deflation is like the big issue, right?
Right.
That's the one that we're told about, right? Oh man, well, think about it this way: yes, it goes one direction, right? If people are consuming fewer things, then there's less value, quote unquote, generated in the economy, and then therefore less employment in a weird sense. Though I'm not entirely sure that's the case, because I think you'd find ways of restructuring, or people would find ways of, I don't know, getting paid that might not
Well, we
be.
can talk about automation too. But
Well, yeah, that's a whole
continue.
other issue.
Yeah.
But it also can work in the reverse way, because if you're consuming fewer things, then you don't need to buy as many things, and you don't need to have this crazy outlay of purchasing power, right? In the United States, you can live a comfortable life for, as a single adult for something like, let's say, generously $80,000 a year. Not in the Bay Area, but on average, maybe even 60.
In my
right?
hometown, the average income is $40,000.
That's
There
like
you
mine
go.
too.
Yeah.
Mine too.
Yeah.
In Missouri, that like when you just said 80 grand, I'm like, damn, that's a lot of money.
I know. And
Yeah.
imagine that. Like, coming from where I came from, moving out here, it's like the idea that 80,000 a year is like, okay, well, Bay Area single, 80 grand a year, like, yeah, you can make that
Yeah, okay,
happen,
you can
right?
eat
Your
out, you can
roommates,
take some
you know,
Ubers,
it's,
you know.
you drive your 78 Celica, you
Yeah.
know, if
Yeah.
it still passes smog.
Yeah, but then again, we're talking about like if an individual is able to reduce their overall consumption by a factor of even half or whatever, just because that's the choice that you make, and you're able to make things work that way, then you don't need to be making as much money. You don't need to necessarily be working a 40-hour work week at that point, which is again an implicit assumption to the system that we live in, that people need to spend 6 to 8 hours a day, and well, that's already being challenged, but in an office building or now working from home, when we weren't built to do that in the first place.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think like education is like a really good first step.
Yes.
It's like I remember when I first moved out to California, and there was like 3 different garbage bins. Simple shit like this, right?
Yes.
And just like the orientation around the individual is that they are a little bit more aware of their impact as it pertains to nature.
Yes.
Whether that's shows up in driving a Prius or whatever it is, because they're all over California, which they're not really as much all over in Missouri. There's like big trucks, right?
Yeah.
And like I think that there's partially because of an education in that, and like we have like really strong environmental policy schools within California, like UC Santa Barbara, like from just like having like major oil spills right off of pristine coast. It's like we've learned, and I feel like in Missouri there's way less of like a they're just like not as in touch with the nature and environment around them.
So one thing too is like if you're not in California, 3 bins sounds like a lot.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
It's like
absolutely.
compost. What do I do with this? You know.
Even recycling.
Right. Yeah.
Even
absolutely.
recycling
Yeah.
was like relatively new
Yes.
in Missouri when I left when I was like
Right.
17 or 18.
So I wonder about this too when you bring up the whole basically people being further away from nature,
Yeah.
right? And that relationship. I think that like post World War II or even post World War I, there's this movement in Western society away from nature.
Yeah.
We wanted to
High
capitalize on we wanted to not even high society, but just that American dream thing, the car, the tank full of gas, the diners everywhere, the convenience. And it was this this worship of the superiority of our society so that you never needed to get dirty. You never needed to be
Right.
uncomfortable or anything like that. And that's, people obviously don't want to be uncomfortable, but there was this conscious shift away from even wanting to be out in the natural world.
Sure.
And now people are finally starting to discover, maybe being far removed from that is actually incredibly toxic and
Right.
can make us sick,
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well
Another
said.
thing to consider, there are 2 groups of people who are on this spectrum, right? On one end, you have people who are just completely focused on their survival. They have they only think about tomorrow, right? They only think about how I'm going to make it to the end of the month. So thinking about like recycling and the long-term impact of the environment is not even on their list,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And then you have another group of people who arguably can afford to think of these ideas because their time is being liberated.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I was actually just this weekend in Colorado. I was in this conversation with some people about, how we need to be more conscious about the things that we consume. The stuff that I like to like to harp on.
Yeah.
But this girl that I was talking to actually pointed out. She's like, "Well, realize how privileged you are to even be in a position that you can talk about this
Yes.
as something that we need to improve."
Yes.
And she really took me aback for a second because, it is really easy to be like, oh, we're doing all these things improperly or incorrectly and we need to do better. But that's also very, very easy to say when you're not having to fight for your next meal or
Yes.
whatever,
Right.
Yes.
Right.
But I think the point there is just because that is a thing doesn't necessarily, reduce the need for people to overall reduce their impact,
Absolutely.
right? Especially
Right.
if you are in a privileged enough position to be able to make that call,
Yeah.
right? Like that's a responsibility that people have. Like I'm not like the pollution, the overconsumption, that's not happening that hard with people that are making 20, 30, 40 grand a year, right? Maybe you're driving a diesel truck, maybe you're not recycling, maybe all that kind of stuff. But that's not where the huge issue is. That happens more at the commercial and industrial level.
Right.
And that's the kind of stuff that we need to actually change.
Right.
So I'm completely like I think those 2 things are completely in alignment actually.
Right. I co-sign this. There's a invisible hand in this that we're okay. Move
Oh, is it? Oh, here.
it's-
Let me.
No.
We
We're
work
like
on
on
it.
this conversation here, and
Guys,
Shirley's
yeah.
like,
God, leave.
sorry, keep going, dear.
Sorry, y'all. There's like an invisible hand kind of manipulating all of this, right? There's like a big brother behind this. And thanks,
Yep.
Austin. Speaking of big brother, there's a big hand manipulating things, and we're in the mix. But seriously though, like there's I think it's really easy to get distracted with like pointing fingers ultimately, like you should be doing this and you should be doing that. And I think arguably the point is to consider how can we unite ultimately and progress like forward as like a group, as an entity. Arguably that's what we do with music, right? It's an opportunity for us to become one, right? And and thank you, I appreciate your help. It's an opportunity for us to like become one ultimately, and really question where we align in this whole scheme we call humanity. Where do we align? Where can I find commonality with my brother or my sister? How can we vibe in this moment?
Music is a vessel for that, for sure.
Yeah. It's like the conduit for sharing emotion, really.
Yeah.
So how do you take that with you, though? once the party's over, once the high wears off, you know, how do you personally and encourage society as a whole to remember to see that in each other when we're constantly bombarded by propaganda and brainwashing and all of this stuff?
Reasons to fear.
Yeah. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
It's, you know, and I love that. I love music, obviously, as a conduit, like you say, for bringing people together. But how do you make that last in the psyche of somebody? How do you make that mindset continue? Yeah.
Is it like any mind-altering thing, right? It's
Ooh.
like you have to keep hitting it.
Yeah,
you
you're
know,
chasing
to,
it.
like keep it
never
keep
ends.
it going so that you continue to think that way. You have to continue to experience it. But I'm with you. I'm with you. Like how do you get that injection and it lasts you for a week, you know, and it lasts you through a moment of anxiety and it lasts you through a moment of friction with someone. It's like, oh wait, hold on. I last Saturday night was at an amazing house party at Daniel Erik's, and here I am now on a Wednesday, and there's someone I have friction with, but I need to remember that we're all in this thing together. Like, you know, we are. And so maybe I need to think more about what's coming from the person who I have friction with, you know?
Yeah, that's deep.
And maybe music can do that. And so let's make this now the official introduction of you, right?
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that was quite the introduction,
Thank you.
or the beginning.
we're
that was
Yeah.
it was good.
So Daniel Erik,
Hi there.
welcome back
Oop.
down.
Thank you
It's
for
great
having
to
me.
have you down here. Thank you for playing some of your original tunes.
Oh yeah, always. You guys
And
are
Shirley?
best.
Hello, darling.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great. We had a really good conversation earlier, I
Mm.
think. And
Agreed.
it's always good vibes to be here.
That microphone stand is
It's
your
really
is not your
troublesome.
friend. I've got like cranked down as much as I can.
Yeah.
We'll see what we can do about it. Maybe you guys can get another conversation. I'll find another stand or something.
Just keep holding
Chris, what's
I'll
up,
just
brother?
hold it.
fresh in from Denver.
I know, right,
Nice.
man? Had a good time off.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
was it?
Yeah, it was a good time. That's always nice to get out into nature and kind of reset. From Denver to Boulder to Breckenridge.
Sick.
We went to the
enjoyed
I love all
Flatirons
those
too.
places.
Yeah, it was really cool. Boulder was awesome,
Boulder
dude.
is sick.
Great vibes out there. I went and hiked the Flatirons, and then the next day I was at Red Rocks.
Yep,
you
I've
know?
been there.
Yeah,
Hiked the
dude.
steps.
Did you hike around too?
I
and
hiked
everything?
around.
Yeah.
I hiked around. I have not played at Red Rocks. It's on my to-do list.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
a thing going on there, man. It's got a vibe. That's
The
for sure.
acoustics there are insane and so good. It just bounces off of the rock in this weird
That's
psychedelic
amazing.
way.
Have you seen a show there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Which one?
I saw. Actually, this is a great band to see at Red Rocks,
Sure.
but also I would not go and see this band for the record. Now, they're a band called STS9.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah.
There's like
They're
super.
badass.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
super. But that's not normally my cup of tea. But
Sure.
I had some hallucinogenic mushrooms and I had an unbelievable time and I was blown away. And that place definitely has some sacred vibes.
That's awesome. You do think about, like, there are certain bands where you're like, oh, I want to see them at Red Rocks,
Yeah,
right? Because it's
yeah.
that same
That
thing.
wasn't the band.
STS9 would be the one. Well, like if you're in that situation.
I feel like I would like. There's so many like that's where like the biggest people in the world play, right?
Sure.
It would be like
Yeah.
amazing to see someone like Paul Simon or like something like something like that. I know that Austin's gone, but
God.
I was thinking about how you're talking about capturing the live music experience or the experience like that fix and keeping it for a long period of time. And what we've seen is that's not really even been possible through COVID times. Like we've seen, one of my friends just wrote a great article in the SF Examiner about musicians' mental health. And it was like this, like not like, I feel like no one is talking about that. They're not essential workers. They're not in that category, which is another thing that I think it would be interesting to talk about is like essential workers. It's like it's essential for everyone to make a living. But
True.
beyond that, the thing as it relates to musicians and COVID, it's like we've seen that when you take away the live experience and that joy and that fix, that it becomes a really dark situation. It crushes communities. It like crushes collaborations. It like crushes entire projects and dreams and sounds and things. And it's like we're in it, and we see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's not really clear what the damage has been. Right? Because like venues are just now starting to be like, okay, we can consider having shows in 2022 or whatever. And it's like, it's kind of this game of who's left standing.
Yeah, not to mention the bands that, you know, the members have had to go get day jobs or more essential stuff, whereas prior to that, they were completely self-sufficient on music.
Exactly.
And yeah, you're right. What's the impact of that long term? Are these people going to get back together? You know, there's a lot of that stuff that's probably gone for good.
And like lives change, like over the like people, like one band that I have participated in, it's like at one point they were touring and playing 200 shows a year. Like they opened for Blues Traveler all over the world. They've like played at Byron Bay Blues Festival.
Nice.
And they just like were not I wouldn't call them, they hadn't like made their big break, but they had done the work to set themselves up for the break to happen. And like, you know, they played like the last time I saw them, they played at the Fox Theater opening for Tower of Power.
No, nice.
And it was super sick, and I got to go and like be a part of that experience, which was like amazing. And I look at that project and I'm like, there's now kids in the picture. There's now new partnerships that have taken people to different locations, right? Lives have changed because of COVID, which is like inevitably going to stifle a lot of like the health, I would say the health of these projects that people were really excited to see, that had momentum, that might not ever exist again.
Right.
You know, and like that's what I really liked about that SF Examiner article, is it really took the perspective is like that's a scenario where at least everyone's alive and has made it through the pandemic without having like mental breakdowns or serious drug overdoses or any of the other things that are like very real possibilities when mental health is gone unchecked.
Right. I think that was one of the almost running jokes at the beginning of quarantine, was how many alcohol sales had like, you know, doubled or tripled, right? And
that's
funny, haha, but that's a huge indicator of a wider mental health problem, because people were literally self-medicating the way out of quarantine, you know. That's
and you know,
tough
to say self-medicating in some ways. Yes, absolutely. But that also implies that they were trying to repair something. A lot of it was just partying to begin with. It was just like, I didn't actually have to show up for work. And so if they had to kind of like, no one knew, they could say, oh, my Zoom's not working. You know, there's too much traffic on there. And they don't even bother doing anything that day. And it gives you an excuse to get drunk on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah, it's
Friday.
like the routine of the hang is like what causes you like, oh, it's 9 p.m. This is usually when I go and see live music. I'm going to go and get booze. But since it's not Thursday, I'm still going to go. You know, whatever. I want that feeling.
That's the saddest thing I think that happened during COVID. There was this breakdown of like social networks. And so those things that made you feel supported and made you feel safe and secure were gone, right? And so one of the things that people would do, arguably, was to delve into their vices. That's what made me feel safe. So I mean, initially, when it comes to like process addictions, right? Like you're just doing it because it's fun and it's something that I do, et cetera, et cetera. And then you realize you're trying to numb a wound within yourself. And COVID happened and everyone's pretty scared and they don't really understand what's going on. And you're losing all of your social networks and all the things that you're planning for in the future are falling apart. It's really easy to internalize that, that struggle, that pain. And people turn to what feels comfortable, which is their vices, in a way.
Yeah, it's true.
I know for me, at the beginning of the pandemic, because of all those uncertainties, I kind of had like that emotional, just like, holy shit, I don't know who I am without this thing that I've been doing since I was a little kid. And my reaction to that was actually to just like leave my normal life entirely. And I have a friend of mine who has a farm in Mendocino, and at the time I was like, you've been to my house, we rage. Like even when it might not be the most safe. Like, we do. So that being said, though, like, I watched my own almost, I want to call it like survival instincts, because I don't remember a lot. My emotional like life was built around these live performance experiences, and the gratification that I received from both playing on stage and that feeling afterwards.
Exactly.
Right? And like, so for me, I just like was like, I got to get out of the city. I can't be reminded of this like constant like desire to be social, but the fear of being social being a dangerous thing, you know?
Sure.
Wow.
And so I had this community in Mendo that it's like a permaculture farm. So they grow most of their own food. They have their own animals that either graze on the land or in properties nearby. And they have like this whole local community network. But I just like kind of almost feel like my gut reaction to that, because it's like I don't actually see a psychologist or, you know, talk to a therapist or whatever. My way was I had to go inside and go to this farm where I could just be by myself and be with like the same small group of people and just be supported while I just like learned how to be happy not being social.
Oh, wow.
Which is like, you know, I feel like there were many nights where it was very intense for me, because it would be like, I'm not someone who gets in bed at 11 p.m. or midnight. I'm someone that's up at like 3:30 in the morning playing songs out loud or whatever in a studio, wherever I'm at. And like, for me, the like, I feel like when I finally saw that SF Examiner article, I was like, finally, people are understanding that like music, because of the nature and the medium in which it's presented, live music and not record sales, streams and shit, that doesn't make very much money for your average musician, that like those are the first line people who actually had their lives just wrecked in a way.
Right.
You know, or, you know, some people were able to rebuild, some people were not. But like, I don't know, it's like, I finally feel like there's some ability for society to start to reconcile the fact that we crushed a lot of people's careers through what's gone on. So
It is a bit like a train wreck, like a car pile up in a way, I think. Like now that you mention it, the support staff that goes along with putting on, you know, with supporting a band, from label level to logistics level to, you know, the sound guys to the roadies to all the crew members of it. And like you said, like, you know, now kids come along, and once there was that, you know, the brakes got slammed on in the front, there's just all this momentum behind everything that's, you know, kind of, I guess, coming down the track and come to rest, not necessarily on the rails anymore.
I know.
And so how do we get everything back onto the rails, and maybe those trains don't look the same anymore?
Yeah, well, people like you all that are making safe spaces for people to come and make music and make art. And I think that's like the biggest thing that any of us as individuals can do. I mean, like, I know that like my trips down here for my mental health have been amazing.
Absolutely.
Like I come down here and it's like I'm in this other place. We play great tunes. It's great vibes. And it's like, pre-COVID, I knew how important community was, but once it's gone, and once it's like, I don't have the option to, like, there's so many nights it would be like, oh, it's Tuesday night, I should go stop by the Legionnaire, there's a good band tonight, right? And I would sometimes do it, I would sometimes not do it. But then when that option is taken away, you realize how deep that those like little 20 minutes of going in and just seeing a band for 15-20 minutes at the end of your night actually change your mood, your day, you know.
Does the type of music change you, or is it just experiencing the live music? Like, you go in there and it's like, you know, some like hard raging stuff and you going at it, or if it's somebody that's really laid back on some nice jazzy blues kind of thing, you know, it's like, or is it just like, I just need that sense of, I need the air to move in a certain way, you know, I need to feel that.
I feel like, I mean, it's probably a little different for everyone. I feel like when you can like look and see musical energy being passed between people, like a lot of times you don't see this in like symphonies and stuff because it's very much orchestrated.
Right.
But like when you can feel energy, whether it's metal or rock or funk or blues or jazz or choir music, whatever, like if you can feel the connection, like whether it's improvised or... That's like what I just love those moments.
I witnessed stage telepathy last night a few different times, you know, and that's a thing. Like when you've played with a group for a while, and you know how people like to make their changes dynamically and stuff like that, then there's a sense between you what's going on, and those moments are really fantastic. And I saw that more than a few times last night.
The crazy thing is those were strangers.
Oh man,
that's
hard.
wild
That's
thing.
hard to believe. I mean, but that's just the level of musicianship that was there on the porch.
But I think like my dad came to that show. My dad's been to hundreds of Grateful Dead shows. He's like a huge Deadhead, right? He like came and he was like, what I saw that last night. You know, when I called him on my way down here, he was like, what I saw last night. Just the diversity of the music, the like orchestration and the energy flowing. And I was like, because my dad kind of plays, but not really, but he does love music. He goes to shows for the energy, and I think that's what we all go there for, and that's not a genre specific thing.
No.
Yeah. That's well said. Yeah.
I was just thinking, it's not a genre specific thing. It is. How do you get people to open their minds to that? Like, there's an interesting idea. Like how, you know, we are so siloing. We're so compartmentalizing. We're so structuring everything that we bring in, all the data that we bring in, including our music many times, if we're not musicians, and even if we are musicians. But I think musicians have the respect for the creation of the music itself, regardless of genre, right? It's like you can hear someone do something, you might not even really understand the genre all that well, but it's like, whoa, like that, okay, yeah, cool, as a musician, you know, and you feel that, I guess, as a consumer. But I also can see how a lot of the paying gigs out there in the world are based around, you know, kind of a very thin scope of what type of music is being played there. And is there a way of, like, what's the approach to mixing that up a little bit, you know, to where someone who might, or does the consumer not want that, period? Like, you go there and you've got like a death metal band, and then you've got a country band, you know, is the vibe too hard to switch those gears?
I recently started getting into metal music, and I didn't realize how poetic it was. And cool. I think it's because it's the lyricism behind it, right? So it's very intense, very loud, and you can't really think about it, right? But they hit you with these really impactful lyrics that just force you to look at yourself. And I think that's the balance that the musician needs to find, right? Like, it's not necessarily that the consumer is looking for a specific type of music. They're looking for a specific type of experience. They want to feel a certain way.
Sure.
Which is what live music gives.
Well,
right?
Yeah.
And I think that there's different levels or different ways in which you can engage with music and engage with art, right? Not everybody is going just for the energy exchange. There might be some people that their interpretation of reality is an entirely mechanistic one, where the energy exchange that you're referring to doesn't even exist. So for that kind of person,
yeah, I believe it too.
Yeah. So for that kind of person, you know, that they might not be interested in that aspect of it. They might not resonate with it that way, right?
Yeah, that's like the kind of person that like goes to the show and like talks the entire time and doesn't really focus on the show, but they go because of the social connotations of going.
And that's one valid way of being in the world.
It is not the way that I want to be. Not the way that I want to be. Actually, I couldn't be that way. Like, literally, I will be having a conversation with someone and there's music playing and I'm at a show and they'll like talk to me and I'm just like, what are you saying?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I see your mouth. Because my ears can't do the deduction or whatever of sounds to like funnel out all the like instrumentation or whatever someone's playing a melody. It's funny though that like you're basically talking about the opposite side of the spectrum, which is someone who can't access what music is really all about for whatever reason, right? We don't know what that is.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and so part of and that type of person, or and again, I think that maybe it's not even levels, maybe it's more of a spectrum, right? And so there are people that would just love everything, just love the energy exchange, and that's it. And on the opposite side, you got people that really don't give a shit either way. But then you've also got people that are more in the middle of the spectrum, where they might resonate particularly hard with certain genres, and then other stuff like metal, country, hip hop might not appeal to them as much. And that's something that you hear. I think that's actually that middle spectrum, of course, because everything's a bell curve, is kind of the more common way of engaging with things, right? That's why you hear people say, oh, I like a lot of stuff, but not this, and this genre.
Yeah.
Right?
I like to think that more people could be like my buddy Zero. Do you remember seeing Zero at the show? Do you guys know who Zero is?
Describe Zero.
Zero was the old guy who came. He's a Berkeley astrophysicist professor.
Oh, the one that went hanging out outside afterward?
And he was the dancer. Yeah. I like to think that guy is the truth of what humanity... That guy acts as though he has understood and seen the other side. And been like, I have come here... I don't give a shit that I'm 30 or 40 or 50 years older than all of these other people. I don't give a shit that I look weird and I wear my bike helmet inside this bar. I am here to get my dance on and to feel the vibrations. And it's funny because, people look at him and they're like, that guy's on drugs. And they like back up away from him.
That was my first seeing was like, well,
this is, I mean, I've met him because he comes, guess where he always ends up? Right. He always ends up where the music is.
And he's
the party is. I wouldn't have been surprised if he had shown up at the Hacienda that night. Right? So and that guy actually teaches at Berkeley. God, wow. He is just like a super quintessential professor nerd. I've talked to him. He's really kind and super sweet. But when he dances and when he hears music, he has cosmic things go on inside of his mind, and he dances like that.
Wow. Look at my red hot consciousness, baby.
And gives no shits about it. Like, it's like very odd dancing. Like, it's not following any sort of pattern, but it's just the energy. And I'm just like, I think that like, if more people could find their ability to access what that guy is accessing, the world would have a lot. Our mental health situation would be a lot better if we could just teach even kids to just dance and feel like that and access it.
So I think that one way to, again, I don't know Zero. I just saw I had an impression.
But it's a right. There's been other Zeros in your life.
Yeah, you do. You run into these people, and it's like this. In order to exist functionally in society, not necessarily in the way that Zero's doing it, but to like fit in, right? They talk about this all the time. You gotta like wear masks or whatever is the common thing that people talk about. I think of it sometimes in terms of like layers, where you're kind of like layering things in front of just your perception, whether that's filters or stuff like that. And then you run into people like Zero who seem to just have this innate connection to the of things.
Source.
And yeah, exactly. And that does, I think, have to like that's somebody that is able to kind of like consciously or unconsciously peel back those other added layers of society, man, in order to in order to get to something more pure, right? And that's sick.
It is
super sick to see somebody like that.
It's cool to like be able to like have you guys seen him in the public doing his thing and probably just had your own like little mental picture of it, right? And everyone has like their image of it. Of someone like that at a concert, right?
Yeah,
like the person dancing crazy.
Yeah, like
but
where
no
he was
drugs.
positioned, the way he was.
That's the thing, right?
He seemed like he was cracked out.
Yeah.
He was not cracked out. He was just feeling it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And that's the thing, right? Drugs can help peel back those layers, but the real thing is when you get it sober and you're just able to feel
That's
that energy.
transcendence
Yeah.
there.
And I think people everybody has the ability to do that, without a doubt. I mean, I've certainly felt on similar levels sometimes, but it's not something that happens all the time for most people.
And it also is context. I like what you said. You're like, not all music in every instance has to be that kind of like, this is a concert, this is a show, right? There are plenty of situations. We see it all the time in society, like walking down the aisle, like, oh, you just like want to hear pretty music as you're walking down the aisle. Are you listening to it?
Yeah. No.
No, but it's a vibe.
Right.
And like, I don't know. I think that there's a validity to that type of experiencing of music.
Mm-hmm.
But as it pertains to kind of like the live show and, getting back even to like how we were talking about capturing that feeling, I think that like it's really, really important that communities come together and have events like last night. Not
I thoroughly agree with that.
Like places like this, and if these can happen now, we don't have to wait till 2022 to be doing this. But you have to know cool people and be involved in a scene. And again, go back to our big thing is community, which has been enormously disrupted. So there are plenty of people that I know that would love an opportunity to play music, but they don't have access to solid community because it's not something that they knew how to build or knew why it would be important to them in their careers or whatever the situation is. It's like,
yeah.
Well, they can come to the Roadhouse. We got a stage.
Hell yeah.
Well, that is kind of the thing about the COVID thing is this disruption that happened where when you talk about community and developing community, especially in the Bay Area, for a lot of people, that didn't really matter prior to this. If you had money, you could buy your way into whatever club you needed to or whatever experience you wanted, right? But now this whole thing happens, all of the normal stuff is shut down. And so a lot of this kind of grassroots stuff is cropping up. Yeah. But you can't buy your way into this. Well, actually, we do accept donations here.
In cryptocurrency.
Exactly. Bitcoin Ethereum preferred. Or
yeah, absolutely. Give us some gas.
It is cool though, but the average, like, what's fascinating is like, I'm just gonna use this as an example, right? So my dad has this friend. This friend came last night to the party for a period of time. They're super cool, but they're like what I would consider kind of like, there's like a high-end real estate agent, kind of like not in touch with like cool music vibes at all, except for through my dad and by default who's through me, right? So she ended up at this lit as fuck party last night without any idea of what she was walking into, but totally like not even necessarily put any time into like kind of building a community. I guess she did through me, but like like that type of experience, she couldn't have just like been like, oh well, I have $10,000. I want to have this experience. It's like, no, you can't pay for that. You have to care about people and support people and like follow their careers and know who they hang out with and know where they live and be their friend and then you get to see cool shit.
Dude, it's layers, man. It is. Layers. It's like it's you were talking about for this individual probably decades of societal programming that they are a certain way in the world, and that's just the way they need to. I am real estate agent person. I am serious. This. I have worked hard. I made money, and now I can go to a lit ass party like this and not necessarily go and put the effort in to connect with somebody or something like that.
It's interesting.
Yeah. And
you can't buy those experiences.
No, and that's what we're saying.
Yeah, that there's that has been commented down here, which was really great. That's the best validation in the world to hear someone say something to that effect. So it's glad we're able to do that. So, all right, man, we've been like, wow, we've been hitting some places.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Daniel Erik.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
Since you are our guest.
Hell yeah.
How long have we even been going?
You don't want to know.
I wasn't tripping about it.
No, I'm loving it. I love it. These things are important, and we need to talk about it, and we can talk more about it. But so you are a teacher of music. You are a professional gigging musician.
Yep.
You do studio work as well.
Yep.
How did this? You said since you were a kid. So what's the story, man?
The story is my dad got me my first guitar when I was maybe 5. I immediately just was like obsessed with it. There was no like I learned Bad to the Bone, and in my first grade I stood up on this table in shorts shorter than yours. They were jeans though, but they were still pretty comfortable. And and I wore sunglasses, and I played my red guitar in first grade, and I played Bad to the Bone.
Wow.
And I remember that feeling. Even then, I remember the way I felt right after that gig, and I was like, that was the craziest thing I've ever done.
You were hooked?
Right? So then like, through my parents immediately were like, he's got some special music stuff going on. We should get him a teacher and like let him do his thing. And from that point, I guess I kind of just like was pretty into kind of jam band stuff for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I got older, I got more into jazz and blues and other types of like really what I got into was the roots of the music that I was actually liking. Like I liked this, like the Grateful Dead, right? My dad's favorite band, who just like inundated all the time with this shit. I was like, this is good. Is this the original song? No, it's a cover. Okay, who sings the original? Oh, the cover is or the original is way better, right? And then you go back and you start learning some of these like older cats, and you realize that like, they were the source of like a lot of the original blues and soul and funk and R&B music. And at least that's kind of the genre that I do a lot of work in, as well as rock and like singer-songwriter support stuff. And once I got into like finding the sources of a lot of the music that I loved, and then learning how to make those sounds, it kind of was a process of like, okay, I'm good at this, but how do I make this into a sustainable living? And for a long time, like Anneshirley and I met in college, and at the time I was like afraid to truly embrace the fact that it was possible to live the life that I'm living now. I was like, and I think every artist experiences this, unless they're born in like some California hippie shit where like both their parents are like, just be an artist, you're great, you're awesome. But like, I'm pretty sure I didn't have a lot of Missouri friends that had that experience either. Most of their parents, either came from like families where both parents had to work or whatever the situation was, and like we talked about security a lot earlier, and it's really revolving around the fear of not being able to provide for yourself in the long-term situation, which is a truth. And those are real things that I still think about to this day, and I'm trying to do everything I can to listen and not just be like, you're telling me I shouldn't be an artist, because those voices a lot of times come from places of love. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, so I once I got the training in, it became, and then I went to school, it became like this thing where I was like, I was at a crossroads, right? I was at this point where I was like, I could either go and be an attorney and just make my living through being a lawyer, or I can just truly embrace the person that I am and jump off this cliff that I don't know where it goes, or whether it's going to end up in a beautiful lagoon, or whether it's going to end up with sharp rocks at the end. Right? And I think that's the leap every artist has to take when they say, I'm not going to just, give up on this and join society, what society wants you to do or whatever. Like, and yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question? Is that?
Yeah. Well, I'm just kind of wanting the genesis from there to hear kind of a thing, but
I chose music, by the way.
So
the suspense.
Talking about choose, like I think that's something I end up in a lot of conversations with people about, like, choice. That at the end of the day, it's all perspective and choice. And I think that it's easy to doubt your talent, right? Like lots of times it's easy to do that. And I think there's a moment where whether they're able to make a living at it or not, there is, musicians have to make this point where they're like, I believe I'm good enough. Like, I believe I can go and do this thing and people will enjoy what I present. Since you started playing at 5, like performing at 5, like was there ever this moment where you were just like, my name's Daniel Erik and by God, I can be a musician? Or was it like, nah, dude, man, I've been doing this shit since I was in the first grade.
Can I tell you that's so funny? And it brings tears to my eyes to even think about it. I had one moment in my entire performing career over thousands of gigs where I had that moment. And it was after we played in front of like 6,000 people in Italy. And after the gig, we just had the most rock star experience. So we had like flown to Italy for this like 3 days. It was like a really short trip all the way to fucking Italy from Oakland. And it was like this lit show, right? In the streets of Perugia, Italy. Wow. Just like in this ancient town square. And just like people as far as you can see. And they just were like hella into the music. And the whole like leading up to the gig and the big stage in the middle of the town square and the excitement in the city of like people being like, oh, I'm so excited to see the music tonight. And then like just like walking around the city because it's not a huge place. And then after the gig, they like took us out to this fancy restaurant and they didn't like bring us the bill. They were just like, order whatever you want. Right. And so it was like booze and wine and meats and cheeses. It's just like literally the quintessential experience, right? That we all would love to strive to be treated after we give our art with a group of people. And I got back to my hotel room and I just started bawling. I was like, I think that was a big validation point for me in my life where I recognized like, hey, you're not just like Daniel that like practiced guitar in the basement for 10 years or whatever. Like, you are worthy of sharing and you are worthy of being seen and your art is cool, basically.
Yeah.
That and so that was, but that was at age 28, right? And I feel like I'm someone who doesn't let naysayers stop me. But those voices that live inside of you are so intense that they can just completely overwhelm the positive self-talk that really needs to happen. That I always envision like the California hippie parent, which I have friends like this, and they're amazing. Like, I love them. Like, I'm like, oh,
Dad,
your mom.
Why couldn't you've been more hippie?
I know. Well, they're just so sweet, right? They're so. It's such like a new agey way to raise your kid, to just be like, follow your heart and your dreams, and like, don't worry about money. Don't worry about like that pressure of how you're gonna take care of yourself. Like, just be yourself and let it happen.
Yeah.
There are schools. As a matter of fact, I think in Boulder, outside of Boulder, there's a school, if I'm not mistaken, that you do whatever you want. Like, it's more like just a place.
Yeah, like a
they have a
Montessori
pond
style.
where you can go and fish. Like, if your thing's fishing, like all day long, you go down there and you fish.
I think it's important. One of the things also that like going to that farm at the beginning of the pandemic is talking about community too. It's like I lived with a 7-year-old there. One of the other people that lived there had a kid, right? And this 7-year-old just had his world closed. Okay, so like I'm the nearest to his age. Okay, so me and this 7-year-old became friends, and we would play Foursquare. We would hang out, and it was like this whole thing where like I begrudgingly did it, but at the end of the day, like I was like, that was so nice. It was so nice, right? But I look at him and I look at like how he can access his imagination because he's living on this farm and he's like kind of by himself a lot, and he has like a lot of space. He can just like take a stick and go out in the woods and be free. And I think that like that's the beauty of his childhood. Like, I didn't have that. I feel like a lot of times someone would be like, don't carry that stick, you're gonna poke someone in the eye, or like living with all this caution, as opposed to the more like let them learn and let them find their path, as opposed to tell them what you think that their path should look like.
Exactly. Yeah.
I thoroughly agree with that. I have children of my own, and one of my things is it's kind of like the 3 question thing, or the three experience thing. It's they might ask me or start to do something that could harm them, or ask me a question about something to explain something, and so I go through it with them, or I stop them. Whoa, this is why I stopped you. Okay, like explain the whole thing, and this is what could happen. Do you understand that? Can you see how this could cause this, right? And then the second time, I'll stop them. If they're going to hurt themselves, I'm always going to stop them. But it's like the second time, I usually will stop them and ask them a question. Like, whoa, what could happen if you did that? And we talked about this, right? Like, what could happen? And
It's
then
like curiosity.
they've got to go back in their memory bank, and then logically they have to work through this process again, right? And then the last one, if of course they're not going to hurt themselves, is I just stare at them, and like make them go through the experience on their own at this time. Like I have given them the tools that I know to give them. I imparted the data to begin with. Then I gave them a way to recall that data after that, and now they've got to implement on their own. It's kind of the way that I.
And you led with curiosity there.
Yeah.
That's the critical point.
Killing curiosity is so harmful. The idea that just the other night, a couple of guys, 2 rappers, really great guys, Garrett and Aaron, they were down here and we were talking about this very thing, and one of them was talking about their mother and their ineptitude towards technology, right? Like all you have to do is just put in your email and the password that you like. This is not complicated. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, how do you feel with a screwdriver in your hand?
Valid.
It's like that is being so lost, where it's like the doorknob is loose. I can't open the door. There's a screwdriver right there. Tighten the doorknob, and you now can use this again. But that seems to be lost, whereas using the phone at rapid pace and flowing through all this data all the time, that is now the new norm, where just simply understanding how something functions, like a screw, like a doorknob, that seems to be getting lost. And that's frightening to me.
Well, with technology being built to really stimulate your curiosity and everything like that, I mean, it does make sense that that's what people would tend to do now these days, right? And yeah, I think to some extent we want to try and avoid exposing especially young kids to that kind of stuff, right, from early age.
And just like when a kid shows when a kid shows curiosity, it should be met with either more curiosity, or just like support in any form.
Exactly.
Like not this like, oh, don't even like think about that.
I've witnessed that so many times. Stop asking me questions. I've heard those words before, And granted, when you get inundated with why all the time, there is a moment where your brain is just like short circuiting.
Yeah, you're like out of parent patience.
The break stuff. Come on, nice. But it is what I found to be hopefully the most effective thing is to answer a question with a question once an attempt at exchanging the data has happened at least once.
Sure.
In my oldest son, we were walking by a piece of equipment. I'm very proud about this moment. We were walking by a piece of equipment recently, and I just looked down, and there were these saddle weights, right? And their purpose is to balance the piece of equipment. And I just pointed down at them, and I said, "What is this for, Burley?" That's all I said, right? And he looked at it for a moment, and he was 10 at the time, I think. And he's like, balance. Like, he could look at the situation. He's never driven. He'd never seen it move. It was a new thing to him, but he could identify that. And that's, I think, through attempting, like, if we don't know the answers when our children ask these questions, there's YouTube, right? It's like, there's the ability.
There wasn't when I was a kid.
No, they're encyclopedias.
That
was work,
You see that with young guitar players now too. They've got access to all like the YouTube lessons and tutorials.
videos,
Oh, dude, it's
yeah.
crazy. I remember, the first time I saw like a little like I think like Comcast Xfinity had like how to play rock and roll by like Led Zeppelin when I was like 12 or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And just hitting this because there's video guitar content for the first time, dude.
That shit's cool.
Yeah.
I had a gig at Piedmont Piano, which you guys should go and check
Brett
out.
just played there.
If you ever get a chance to go to Piedmont Piano, you should go. They have some amazing instruments there, and they're super nice and it's a super vibey spot. They have this basement that they let us go in when I played there. I don't know why they let us go down there, but they did. And there was a piano that had a record player and a small speaker built into the piano.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is like, we're talking like your only reference point. There is no video. There is no reverse or pressing a button to go back and listen to it over again. You had to go through and drop the needle on the record every time that you needed to reference it. So for me, even like now as an adult using YouTube to help become a better musician, I look at things like I'll transcribe really intense, heady solos that happen very fast. But the way that I break it down is I slow things down, and so they did have the slowdown technology,
Right, 33 to 45
Exactly.
RPM.
But you're talking like this is some like not great sound fidelity and like very old equipment, and this is why when we talk about getting to the source, right? These people were so good at it because they couldn't just disseminate and make shortcuts. There was none of that. There was like, no, you have to learn it note by note, one at a time.
Think of the entertainers just 50, 60 years ago, right? Like they had to sing, they had to dance. They had to tap dance,
All the shit.
They had, I mean, they really, there were major demands to make it an entertainment back in the day. You had to be multifaceted, multi-talented.
Yeah.
We don't have anything like that work.
I mean, every
anymore,
once in a while, I feel like the pop culture picks up these people. I feel like, do you know her?
I love her. Yeah.
Her is the shit. Like, there's no faking it with that. There are like every once in a while, pop culture picks up someone who I actually am like like I always ask myself. I go back to Ray Charles because Ray Charles is one of the most famous entertainers, piano players. This is a blind man.
Hit the road, Jack.
Like, how do they stand? Do you think that they're talented compared to Ray Charles?
Oh,
Do you think that
wow.
they can? Do you think that they provide like a musical substance that Ray would listen to and be like, "That's tight,"
Maybe.
or have a respect for at least in
Maybe.
across genres, right? Great entertainer, and he was studied in all the ways. We've talked about it. You know,
Yeah.
I'm a big
Oh, yeah.
fan of Ray. Like,
Wow.
like, could he get it?
So what is it when pop culture? All right, so much of pop culture seems to be manufactured, right?
Yeah.
But then there are game changers that find ways of penetrating the noise and coming above, and then pop culture will go to it because money follows money generators,
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
When someone shows that they can generate money, then money goes, okay, well, I like my money to make more money. So record labels, pop culture, the marketing devices, Clear Channel, they all start to make the investment to then bring her or whoever, into the greater populace so that they can make their more money. Is there a way to undermine, for lack of a better term, that?
YouTube.
Right? It is. I
That's
mean,
it.
it is, but at the same time, it isn't.
I know.
Right? There's still algorithmic control.
Right.
There's still control that if you are not generating money for YouTube or Spotify or whoever, or you're not paying money to these channels, then you are put at a certain level, and it becomes much more difficult to penetrate.
Yeah, but even
Sure.
as an independent artist, you can learn about how to kind of manipulate that algorithm better. You're not relying on a larger company or something like that to do all the PR work for you or anything like that. And you've actually we've seen that happen, several times in the last few years with artists that do just blow up using a YouTube,
Yep.
following or something like that.
Yep.
That's not easy. Like you have to be generating, either a shitload of content or just, really, really hit the meme lottery really, really hard,
There's like a paradigm, right? There's like, I've known 2 models that have actually functioned in a way that has created something from very little. For example, I'll just give a couple different dynamics of this exact thing that you're talking about. The Rainbow Girls, amazing singer-songwriter band from Bodega Bay. They're super awesome. They're it's Lorenzo's girlfriend.
Okay.
They would just do like a stream a week, right? And they would just do one song, really cute cover in their backyard. And they just did that religiously for like months.
Consistency is good.
Consistency, right?
Yes.
They had one of their videos go viral. All of a sudden, everything changed. People know them all around the world. Everything is different for them. That was something in their control.
Yeah.
And then the other side of that is I toured with a band called Half Alive. And they kind of have like a younger demographic. Like when I played the shows, it was like mostly kids under 18, which was also cool. They put all their resources into one really sick video with like professional dancers and great choreography. It looked like a high-end budget Bruno Mars quality music video, right?
Yep.
What is the answer? How do you make a plan knowing that those 2 paradigms exist? And like you said, does that actually penetrate the layer of the music industry that goes between starving artist or whatever the term for it? I shouldn't use that term because this goes back to our negative talk. We don't want to think about ourselves as that. Struggling artist, whatever, to a platform where their business is sustainable and they're able to make art and have their art generate money.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So in the case of the flashy video, do you know how much of the overall budget was spent in advertising dollars versus the budget versus the production dollars?
They had no label, no promotion. It
But they
actually,
had- I mean, they
you know
spent
what happened?
money, but-
You know what happened? I think if I remember correctly, because I got to know the lead singer. We were on the road for like 3 weeks, like traveling together, playing gigs, sound check, green room. And some of these, they were like at a point in their career where they had blown up, but they had only played one live show before. So like the first show that I flew to Atlanta for was their second show that they had ever played live.
Wow.
Okay. And it wasn't like at a massive venue. It was at like a 600 person venue. Okay. So it was like, it was fucking crazy. I'll never forget this story. It was like, I fly to Atlanta and this is my first, this is several years ago now. And I fly to Atlanta. This is one of my first like fly dates. I'm all excited. Right. And I take a lift from the airport to downtown Atlanta where this gig is. It's at this really cool venue called the Masquerade. And got my stuff to be on the road for 3.5 weeks plus all my like gear that couldn't ride that I wanted to have with me. And all of a sudden I start seeing just lines of kids, and I'm like, it's like before sound check. I'm not late yet, but these kids, hundreds of kids, had gone straight from school to this venue to wait until doors.
Wow.
Right? I was like, what is going on with this band? What did I just sign up for? And the crazy thing about it is every show on that tour was like that. Every single show was sold out. Every single show had lines outside.
Wow.
And they didn't have a label before they made that video.
Good for them.
And the video is sick. I don't want to undervalue the video.
Right.
And it's the front man is a videographer and had like the whole vision for it, and like he had a really clear vision and executed it really well, and it worked.
Yeah, I still am curious, like how because as the saying goes, it doesn't matter how great the product is that you make. Like if no one sees it, then it doesn't matter. And so I'm still curious, like if they had to spend a lot of money, or how it was that they were able to get the video to that critical mass amount that then it kicks over and becomes this viral thing.
I think I remember Josh telling me that someone reshared it on Reddit or something like that. they shared the music video, and apparently it was labeled as the Stone Temple Pilots, and so it got clicked on a shit ton.
Wow.
And then it just went viral
Wow.
like through that. So it was almost like
It's been
random.
insurgent.
Yeah,
But-
guerrilla like.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Yeah, I know. Wow.
I mean, that's the nature of the transformation of our community in a way. Like, so many. I think we're transitioning into this space where like support is through like virability. You don't have to pay. You can't pay for these certain experiences. In a way, people just want to support those things that are just authentic, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And then
Why is it so hard to
that's-
get someone to hit the subscribe button?
Why is it so
I don't
hard?
know.
Yeah.
Because it feels like you're coercing me, and I don't want to be coerced.
I
No,
think
I'm
it's
just kidding.
I think it's a commitment.
I'm just kidding. It's a
Yeah,
commitment.
It's not because like the action of the click is easy, but the committing to having somebody's stuff on your feed when like you might have only just like liked or enjoyed one video, that's more of a commitment than just liking an image on Instagram or even like
Yeah.
subscribing on Instagram or something like that, right?
Exactly.
Different platforms have different
Interaction models, kind of.
I would say interaction models, and I would say like it's a different like cost for your subscription, right? And with YouTube, I think people are used to subscribing to people that they have built an amount of goodwill towards. In general, like this person consistently makes good content, whereas on Instagram, subscriptions or following is more cheap, right? What average Instagram profile is going to be following 500 to 1,000 people, whereas on YouTube, you're only following maybe 30 to 100 different content creators. And that's also because of it's less easy to consume content on YouTube because the content's longer form vis-a-vis
Right.
Instagram.
Yep.
Right.
I just made up all of that, by the way.
Well,
but
no,
that's
That's
totally
in
right.
the commitment
That's
aspect, like
totally
you said,
right.
like if you are going to commit 3 minutes, 15 minutes, 50 minutes versus milliseconds,
Yeah.
tap,
Mhm.
tap,
Yeah.
tap, tap,
Yeah.
tap, tap, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
So it's this implicit thing, even though, the action of subscribing, you could help somebody that's just trying to build their channel.
I don't even
you know.
use YouTube like that. Like, that's not my source. Like, if I want to follow what someone's doing,
Yeah.
YouTube seems very like, and they've changed it now, right? Everything is changing, right? They're always
Always,
updating
yeah.
it to make it like the most recent. It used to be for me, and maybe this is why it's hard for me to do that, is that YouTube used to be the space for curated content in a way. And I think that like the Instagram model is something that's more like just faster. Like you see like a picture of the person like that just like was in a recording studio like that day with like a group of people. It's more like, it's just like less intensely curated and more interesting to me because it's more like their day-to-day life as
Yeah, it's more
opposed to this
intimate.
like intense video production.
Sure.
The Rainbow Girls video, by the way, went viral on Facebook. And the Half Alive video went viral on
Okay.
YouTube. So again, these different interaction models actually have individual their own like micro science and analytics that go into like every platform is unique. And so it's like, yeah, I mean like what is the answer and how does this all like relate to help like a working musician that's trying to get their name out? It's hard, and I think that getting to whatever your source of your music is and the source of your art in both a visual way, I think is like where you have to start, at least, is figuring out what the visual aesthetic and vibe that you want to instill in people and getting your sound together, right?
That's
Also,
branding,
yeah.
right?
Branding.
Well, yeah, what they talk
Yeah.
about is
You need a
finding your
brand.
niche, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
your personal brand or your overall branding.
Also, I think consistency is super key. Like, that's a law that will apply to anything that you do.
Mhm.
So if you remain consistent in creating, eventually someone will subscribe. You're consistently providing the experience, and I'm thinking about all the people I subscribe to, and they're pretty consistent in their messaging.
Right, and
A
you
lot.
know that you're going to get it
I know,
at a certain
exactly.
time or day or weekly or bi-weekly uploads, particularly for YouTube. And I think that's also part of
Yeah.
that whole the niche thing is
Absolutely.
finding your niche
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
You know, the way that you hear it explained very often is you want to be, you know, say you're the guy that does, you know, guitar covers and also plays a keytar with one hand and with the other. You know, there's probably like, you know, 3 or 4 different dudes doing that or ladies doing that on YouTube. So how do you become the one for that niche? And part of that is going to be consistency and delivering good
Or
content.
that's an opportunity for you to collab with all the other people doing
there
it,
you go.
That's
right?
true.
That's
Yeah,
true.
now I've got 2 guitars. Yeah.
It's funny. Mia
Yeah,
was telling
yeah.
me, like, and she says that this is really common, and she's a professional book designer, like at the highest level, and she's saying that, like, and she tells me, she's like, through the book community, they all like don't know each other really, and then they like interact with each other on Instagram, and then become friends specifically through the social media platforms as their
Right.
method of creating a community.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and I mean, like, I'm all for artists supporting artists. I think that like the success of any one of us helps all of us, and I think that, like, yeah, I mean, to your point too about consistency, I think that like with consistency comes progress, and with consistency comes growth. And like, you know, if you just do one video, you're kind of putting all your eggs in one basket. And if you do the long haul where you're really, and I have so much admiration for people that really can stick to that like very clear regimen of like a video a week or a video every 2 weeks, and like have it all edited. It's like those skills to me are like scheduling and marketing skills that just move again away from what I've been going after, which is like the source, right? And into marketing departments. And so, you know, it points out
that's
just another hurdle that the artists leap through and just take the leap off the cliff to try to figure out, you know?
That's a good point. Like if you're doing the thing where it's like, oh, I have to make a video this week, right? That can kind of move away from the what am I making the music for in the first place thing. It's like, are you making art or are you making content? And those can be the same thing, but more often than not, it's not. You know, there was a supplement like, hey, I made this cool ass video of me playing my song, and maybe the next week you do a breakdown of like the different elements of the track or something
trying to
like
find
that.
more,
Right?
wrestle up more content.
From
the same thing.
But making sure that that you're not just generating in order to hit that consistency button.
Ultimately, like when we're building like a social network, right, it's important to be consistent because it's not just about creating content. It's about how do we come together to make this a thing? How do we provide stability here? Like when I'm putting out my messaging, I mean, it's fun, right? But I also know that there's a group of people that I'm like committed to. We're consistently trying to support each other. And like it's beyond myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You
Running
did
joke,
it.
I did it. Yeah, dang.
Well, you know, there's a study, I think Dominican University did it, that like in goal achievement, if you tell someone your goal, you're 50% more likely to do it. If you write it down, you're so much more. And you know, like, or how write it down and then tell somebody, like, and then if you partner with somebody, like the level of accountability that is not unto yourself anymore, like the more that you give that away, then the more likely you are to achieve a goal.
Right.
And so community can very much be that way, right? Because there's someone there to hold you accountable to your own words and your own desire.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's in validation too, like going back to the belief thing, right? When inside that community there are people who can be, you can trust them to be honest with you in what they have, in the interaction that you have with them, right? Especially when it comes to creating something new, because it's easy inside of a community to everything just be great. Oh, it's fucking great. Oh my God, you're so good, you know? And it's real easy to do because everybody's on a high and everybody wants to let the ball, you know, the plates fall or any of that kind of thing. But inside the community, if you can look at each other and be like, okay, like, you know, like what where are you coming from? Like, tell me where this art that you've just exhibited, like,
What's it about?
You know?
What's it about?
Yeah, that's important.
Maybe I need some context or
Like,
something.
how much
Yeah,
does that
yeah.
community or how much do the individuals in that community care about the furtherance of the art or their subject versus how much do they just want to circle jerk and feel good? Right?
Well said,
Yeah.
right?
So those are
Feel
two separate things.
Wow. Yeah.
Put it out there.
Yeah.
you might want to define what you mean by.
Well, see, a circle jerk.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know if you use it in a musical context, that could mean a lot of things.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, just it's easy to get caught up in the party, though, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to
Yeah.
get caught up in the good time and,
Sure.
and just not wanting that to go away, even if
Well,
what's being created isn't necessarily all that wonderful, you know.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
there was a moment. Again, it's so funny what you can learn from one night of a
It was a
fucking
good night.
rager,
It was
man.
a good night.
There's like, I'm not going to use any names, but some jazz cats that I know left the party after the sunset set.
Yes.
So there was like one of my roommates plays in the 60s psych rock band, and it's hella like kind of like gritty at moments, but it's really cool. It's like super weird at moments, but it's like a vibe, right? It's a
Okay.
vibe. It's not jazz. It is jazz, actually, in a weird way, right?
Okay.
But it's not like
Not what you
it's
would.
not
if
like
you
Louis
said-
Armstrong
right,
jazz.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
And so some jazz cats that I know were at our house, and I talked to them after their experience of listening to that band as the sun was going down, which was like a pretty cool experience. As the sun is setting, you can like see the circumference of the earth. You're like
Yes.
Wow.
watching
San
the sun
Francisco
go behind Mount
Bay.
Tam. It's a pretty cool moment, right?
Sure.
And then whenever I talked to them again, they came back to the party later, and I was talking to one of them, and they were like, yeah, that ride after we left, that was like a really weird set for him and for my friend and I. We just drove in silence all the way to the city for our other gig after we listened to that 60s psych rock band. But you know what? They came back to the party.
Yeah.
Even though that like they couldn't necessarily gravitate to whatever like their marketing or message or brand or even sound, whatever, you know, all the things that which were I
them
think
off that
cool.
much,
It
huh?
threw them off a little bit, but not bad enough that they were like not in a good mood. They were just like, "Whoa, I need some quiet."
Wow.
That's effective.
Anyway, I don't know.
That's tough.
Interesting things that happen at
Yeah,
Ragers
I
that go
mean,
until 5 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, if is it a psych rock band if it doesn't freak some people out? You know?
That's well said.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's
You
what
know what you're playing.
what are we
fire
doing here, people?
buddy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
We're trying to get weird.
Yeah.
So at some point, what was she saying? Fuck me,
Yeah,
fuck you,
yeah.
everybody fuck me.
Yeah. She's like, fuck me.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
Let's all fuck.
Yeah. It was a thing. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, look, guys. Well, you want to put a pin in it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, man. Daniel, thank you so much for
Thank you
coming
for
out and
having
doing
me.
this thing. It was great. We want to do more of it, of course.
I'm down.
Absolutely. Chris and Shirley,
Yeah.
guys.
Probably the
Good to
best.
have the
Getting
gang
our
back
thing.
together.
Yes,
Yeah, I
sir.
know, right?
Rock and roll.
Yes.
We're doing it.
Yeah,
Right,
doing
we're
the
doing it.
thing.
Cool.
All right. Peace out, guys.
Peace out.
Night.
Yeah.
Nice.